listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Gardner.
So I'd like to thank our sponsor, BBO Poker Tables. You can check out their tables at bbopokertables.com. And if you're looking for a table from them, mention our podcast and they'll give you a free gift. So on today's episode, we've got Mark Herm coming back on. And he's coming back on because he's just been the coach for Josh, coming second in the World Series of Poker main event. And he's going to be talking about what it's like behind the scenes for the final table. So it's going to be really interesting talking to him. Tricia, what do you have for us this week?
Hey, I got a tip today, and it has to do with breaking bad habits. Now, I'm working on a new book, and so that's what got me into this, kind of mindset. But a lot of times when we're dealing with bad habits, we think, you know what, I've got to attack the problem by, just breaking that habit, head on. But unfortunately, what we're learning in neuroscience is that habits are extremely tough to break because in our brain, the brain builds up a circuit for any behavior or any thought that we do on a regular basis, but it's not very good at dismantling those circuits. So if you have a behavior that you want to get rid of, some sort of habit, what you need to do is forget about, breaking the habit per se. You've got to replace it with a new habit. So you build a new circuit for something new. So if you want to quit smoking, you've got to replace the smoking with something else and make that a new habit, if that makes sense. And if you guys are interested in learning a lot more about habits and building them and breaking them and all that stuff, I'd like to recommend the book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. A really awesome book, and it can give you even more tips on habits.
And as you were saying that, I was going to say, I'm going to recommend The Power of Habit, and you beat me to it. So we both really like that book.
That is a really great book.
Yeah,
and people, if they're interested at all in, breaking some habit or whatever, that book is it's really good.
I completely agree. So let's give Mark a call. So Mark, thanks for coming back on the show. In case anyone didn't catch you last time, if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, so my name is Mark Herm. I go by the name of Dipthrong on most Twitter and online poker and all that stuff. Most people know me as Dipthrong. I am a high-stakes MTT player, and I've been in the game for, quite some time, probably 10, 11, 12 years. And I actually coach a lot, and I back a lot of players, and that's kind of my bread and butter. And I actually just coached Josh Beckley, who got second in the World Series of Poker main event. And so I'm sure this is going to be a lot to do with that.
Yeah, so that's why we wanted to have you back on the show. Obviously, we wanted to talk about that experience of going out, being part of the main event, the final table, and just to really talk about the things that the players go through. And then from the coaching side, how you felt that you helped him. He was probably one of the big stories of the year because he went from 7th going in and ended up in 2nd. So obviously, huge leaps in money that he made there.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts and just the experience in general?
It's such a big deal. That was the biggest thing that I thought when I was I first went with him to some sort of photo shoot / interview process that they did for ESPN. And it was just such a big deal. And you could just feel the energy running through the place that everyone was at. And it's just a big deal. It's on ESPN. It's there is nothing else in poker that compares to this, the size of the tournament and just all the hype. So it's just it was super cool to be part of that. I felt it definitely rubbed my ego a bit because, it's such a big deal. I was oh my God, this is so cool. And so for the players, you kind of got to see their processes and how guys reacted to it, and you could tell who it was getting to and that sort of thing. But yeah, in general, it's just so big and such production and whatever. So, and I actually didn't envy Josh. I was coaching Josh for the week, and I was just wow, this seems like a lot of pressure. I don't think I would want this. So yeah, that's to give you an idea of the sort of magnitude. And if there's so much leading up to it, and as a poker player, poker players have the tendency to maybe, have problems with getting in their head too much. And it just seems so difficult to not get in your head at this stage of the tournament because everything is so strategically broken down when it's on TV. And then the in-between time of 3 months, you're just thinking so much. And I mean, at least I would be in overdrive, my brain, rather than just like thinking about or just playing, so it seemed very anxiety inducing to me.
So I want to dig a lot more into that, but can you back up and talk about how you even came to be on his team in the first place?
Yeah, so Matt Glantz had a big piece of Josh, and Josh, I think, was getting coached by someone else that he had become friendly with right after the final table went, before the November 9 happened, whatever, when the end of the 7 days at the World Series ended, he had some other coach, and things didn't work out with him for one reason or the other. And then it was like 2 weeks before the final table was going to happen in November, and he didn't have a coach. And so Glantz asked Paul Volpe, who's like a good friend of his that he plays in the game with all the time, do you want to do it? / do you have any recommendations? And Paul, who is a world-class player, he's like, I don't want to do it because I'm not a coach, but my old coach / friend or whatever, he does this sort of thing. He would do it. And then they asked me, and I made my offer of what it was that I wanted. And then they accepted it. And then, so the week before the main event happened was the only time I had ever spoken to him or anything. Like, I met him exactly 1 week before the main event started, the final table. And we just worked for that whole week. I was with him all week long, but that was it. That was all of my coaching entailed.
Wow. So it just takes a week with you, and second place at the World Series main event is possible.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And
every time. I can do it every time. Everyone, if you guys make the final table next year and you're not in the chips, you better hire me.
You're on.
And mindset-wise, going in, obviously, he's in 7th in chips. Is it something where you're saying you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're getting this bracelet? Or were you saying we're going to try and just make as much money as possible here? Like, how did you approach it from that side of things?
Okay, so let me give you a little back history of how I was feeling going into this week, because I've coached a lot of people, but I've never done anything like this, and I was having and I don't know if I talked to you, Elliot, about it. Maybe I did, but I was having a lot of fears coming up for me personally because I'd never done anything like this. I would just coach people via going through online hand histories in the way that I had always done, but I'd never done much in terms of like explaining mathematical ICM. That's just not my strong point. So like I felt very insecure, honestly, about going into it, about that. And just like the final table play is just a completely different thing than normal poker. It's ICM is very complex and strange and weird. Even though I feel like I really do understand it at a great level, just from my experience, I had some insecurities about the actual teaching of it. So I was nervous as hell going into it and not sure that I was going to do a good job. And so I didn't really know how it was going to go. And I'm not the type to like plan much, but I did plan for a few Skype sessions with Nick Petrangelo, who is, I would think, probably one of the best ICM people in the world. And he's like probably like 5 on the cheap global poker index or whatever. And he's just crushing everything. And I just thought it would be great to have him in there, explaining some stuff. But other than that, I didn't have any preparations really. And maybe I should have, but I just didn't. I was kind of just hoping to like connect with him really, like as a human. And then hopefully my experience would, lead me to where we needed to go with it. In terms of strategy, I of course wanted just him to maximize the money that he could make. I actually didn't much think about like the glory or any of that stuff involved. But what it ended up being is it was completely different than what I had thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be so much strategy. And it really didn't end up being much strategy at all. It was more like mental, like I was like guarding him mentally kind of, like I was keeping him positive. I was, just like enforcing things about his game that I thought were good. And it was just like, I would say 90% of it was mindset / like just helping him with things that were going on, like getting him food and stuff like that. I know it doesn't sound very luxurious or whatever to be doing, but like that's what I was doing. And like I was kind of like babysitting. I was just doing everything that he needed to get done. But it was honestly, one of the craziest experiences in my life doing it. I don't really exactly know why, just because it felt like I kind of my skills came out in a way that I wasn't really even aware that I had these type of skills, but I was told by my friends. So for instance, Paul G's and Tapar, like two of my best friends and two guys that I've, dealt with in poker over the past, X amount of years. And they would always tell me that they would say, Mark, the best thing about you is that like you make us feel good. Like you make us feel like we're going to win. And I remember having talks before with like Paul where like he was probably not doing so great. And just knowing that he was going to just win millions. And I was just told him that. I was like, Paul, you're going to win millions. Like, I just know it. And like him seeing how confident I was in him, like I think helped. I'm not trying to take credit for him. I'm just telling you the truth. Or Taylor, I just think that's like my good motivational thing. So it was really more a lot of that stuff.
Did you do any special kind of activities with him? Any kind of cool stuff or strategies that you tried?
Yeah, I was so lost to start. Like I met up with him and we went to his like room and I was like, all right, well, I think you should play some online. I'll watch you play. It was just like terrible. Like it just wasn't the right, stroke for that moment. I wasn't going to be helping him by watching him play online poker tournaments and stuff like that. So what ended up happening is we did a simulation with him, it was great. I had a lot of my friends that were good poker players in town. They helped out a ton and it was like a lot of fun. And my main thing was I wanted to not try to change his game because it didn't seem like that was available to me at the time. It didn't seem like he really wanted his game to be changed. And thank God he didn't, because he crushed based on the way he played. So whenever I noticed that as a coach, that there's some sort of thing in there where someone doesn't actually want to change their game that much, my primary objective simply becomes to give them confidence, basically, and mindset, like stuff. So it wasn't even a strategical thing. We did do the simulation, and I threw my bits and pieces in there, but honestly, I don't know that helped in any way. I don't think my strategic input helped in any way. But he did end up winning the simulation, and I was giving him lots of like positive feedback on the different things that he did. And I noticed that a lot of guys that when they get stuck in trying to help someone, and I'm realizing this is kind of something like I'm like saying I'm the man in terms of like coaching, but I'm just telling you this is the honest, my experience. These guys, they get stuck in their ego of thinking that one thing is absolutely right. And I actually, I've gotten into debates with people about this thing where they are so stuck on the fact that, for instance, you have to defend the big blind with king 9 offsuit when you're 50 big blinds deep and the button opens, right? So strategically, maybe. Like, I'm sure there's math involved, but in my mind, that's one aspect of the game. The other aspect is like the flow of what's going on. And for some reasons, that flow can trump everything, I think. I think the math is super important. And like, I would always, agree with the more standard type play. But this kid, Josh, he is the type of person that has an extreme skill set for observation. Like he just is something that I've almost never seen. He can just pick up on things just from observing that like would just completely go over people's heads, which is like his number one asset. So like I wanted to bring that asset out and simply just be like, because he would get in spots where I could see that he was getting kind of jammed up and not being super sure what to do with like certain stack sizes and things. So I would just tell him every time he would get jammed up, I'm like, Josh, like, you're going to be playing the tournament. You're going to be in the moment then, and you're going to know exactly what to do. Like, that's what I would say to him. And it's true because I know from my playing experience, for instance, I would like watch an event that's going on online. Like say I'm watching the Super Tuesday 1K and I'm not playing the tournament, but I'm watching a table and I'm watching a table play very aggressively. I might look at that and be like, wow, these guys are so sick and crazy and good. Like I would never have any idea what to do if I was like there. But in reality, that's just a flow. That's the lack of me being present and observing, because if I actually am there and I'm observing, all of the knowledge of that what the right move is will become available to me simply by observing, not like by thinking. I'm not using my thinking mind in, I don't think, any way. Like I'm not like thinking about stuff. I'm just observing, and then all of it is coming through intuitively. And that's how this kid plays too. So it was a great match, me and him, because I very much agreed on the things that he did. So as far as things that we did during the week, we did one thing that I thought was amazingly, and I don't even know if it was really that helpful to him. I just loved it. I thought it was cool. He said it was. He said it was helpful. But we did the deprivation tanks in Vegas, which is basically it looks like a hot tub kind of that is enclosed. And the premise of it is that it's sensory deprivation. So you go in it, it's completely dark. You're floating in the water. They put Epsom salts in the water. So you float in it and you just lay there for 60 to 90 minutes. And, the goal is kind of just to be with yourself and, meditate and just kind of experience whatever it is that's going to come out of this thing. And for me, I've always been into like spirituality and meditation and stuff like that. But to be honest, my meditation it's just all over the place. Sometimes I'm doing, 10 minutes a day, but usually not. Usually I'm trying to do it. And I mean, not that I'm failing. It's just I can't stick to it because I feel like I'm not getting anything out of it. Whether or not I am, I'm not sure. But I actually got a lot of anxiety from doing it because I'm like, I have these, I'm crazy scared of like the dark and being alone in the dark. It's something that I've had since childhood. So
being locked in a pitch black tank is a perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just decided to try to do it. I was like, he's doing it in the other room. I should be able to just tough this out and do it. To be honest with you, it was very scary. It was lots of anxiety, lots of crazy thoughts, what's going on? I'm going to get, I'm not even really the claustrophobic type thoughts, more just crazy stuff is going to happen to me. Crazy beings are going to eat my brain or something, just some weird stuff. Right. Right. And that kind of went away after, 30 minutes the first time or something like that. And then I actually got to experience really the deepest meditation I've ever had for periods of time, and for maybe 10 minutes, I would get it where I was just really with my breath the whole time and just feeling good. I don't really know how else to describe it other than I felt great doing it. So that's one of the things we did, which I'm so grateful that we did. We did a lot of yoga. And he was eating vegan for the week. So we had our work cut out for us in terms of getting him fed correctly and making sure he was all good with all that stuff.
Yeah, so pretty hectic from that side. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the flotation tanks. I think it's sort of an enforced meditation that can allow someone who perhaps has really been struggling over the years to get to those deeper states to have an idea of where it is they should be looking to reach. Is that how you found it as well, Mark?
Yeah, totally. Because I just couldn't, I really couldn't get anywhere deep without it. And then just with, I guess, the lack of the senses, I guess it just made it that much easier. And I really almost had a euphoric feeling for some of the times just because I felt totally I guess in the moment or whatever it is when you're feeling good. I felt that for sure.
Very interesting. I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier where you were talking about his level of observation. And one of the big things that came up was the jacks hand, where he 3-bet the jacks and Joe 4-bet him. And Joe happened to have queens, and then he folded the jacks, and there was all this buzz. And then people said, it was reported he came over to you and Matt and said, I just knew he had queens there.
Yeah, I actually forget what he said, to be totally honest, but I think that's what he said. I think he just had queens. That's what he said. Yeah, and it's crazy. That's crazy. And so a little bit about that particular spot and those particular spots with Josh. Josh is new to the game, and he doesn't have all of the noise that us experienced players have about people making crazy moves, right? He doesn't have that fear, that big fear that people are outplaying him, right? Which a lot of guys struggle with. I struggle with immensely for sure. And that fear is really just inhibiting our game. It's not helping at all. It's just this fear that's hurting us. Okay. So he doesn't have that. So he's not even thinking in terms of he realizes people can 4-bet bluff. He's just acting in a way with his play, things that are going to work, regardless of strategic, deep implications or whatever, which is, that's kind of how I play too. I just know rather than learning from math or ICMizer or studying, which I don't even know how people do that. I don't do that. I don't know what that is. Like that's just not how my brain works. You know, I'm sure it's great. Like I'm sure it's great for people that like their brain works like that. It just doesn't work for me. I've just learned through experience what works. Like I'll be like, okay, well, I defended out of the big blind here, and I felt like over time I was winning more money. And I literally can think like that. Just over tons and tons and tons of hands, things become more aware to me that they're like positive plays once you learn them experientially. So I've always been a big proponent of experiential knowledge rather than, I guess, like strategical knowledge. And a lot of people, from what I've seen, want to bring the strategical knowledge in, and they want to use that in a very closed-minded way to really be like, well, you have to do this. Okay, it's poker. You don't have to do anything. That's the big thing. And I was playing for a while from that fear-based closed-mindedness. And I'm sure I'm closed-minded about lots of things in poker, but just in this particular spot, I don't think I am, and I don't think Josh is. Being open to like, anything being a possibly good play. Like just playing a tournament and let whatever naturally is arising from your intuition to go. And I think he does a great job at that. And I think there's different ways to do it. Everyone, I think, has a bit of a different style when it comes to that. But I know I'm not a big fan of people that can't adjust and can't be in the moment as much as guys that are really just kind of going all from being in the moment.
That was something I thought was quite interesting. Obviously, as it's being shown on TV, you're watching everyone on Twitter, and there's a lot of criticism of a lot of the players on the final table. And one of the things that really stood out to me is these guys are, playing for the first time, on probably the first time with this many people watching them live, in an absolutely enormous tournament. And it's like there's an expectation that they'll be able to play absolutely perfect mathematical poker under that scenario. And it just seems so incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I saw it all, and I saw the Twitter, I saw what was going on. Some of these guys are just simply not experienced players. I'm going to be as neutral there as I can. For instance, Neil, he's just not an experienced player. Mm. And I'm meaning it's exactly that. Like he hasn't seen nearly as many hands as a lot of other guys. So why would anyone that seems crazy to me, that someone would expect him to be playing at a level that an experienced player would be. He's just not. If you want to call that bad, okay, call it bad. But I think that, there's two different ones, like everyone has a baseline of what their skill's at and then performing. I think I had a very good view on who I thought was performing well based on their skill. And someone like Neil, I thought would play great. I thought he played, vulnerably, in the sense that he was willing to, make moves, and he didn't let the fears seep in to his game really. And he was able to go for it. And I think that he made a lot of good plays as a result of that for the experience that he had. And Josh too, I don't think he just wasn't scared. I just give so much credit to and I'm obviously a bit biased because I was with this kid for a week and we connected. But yeah, he just played very not scared and very confident and going for it. And one of the other things that I would do with Josh is positivity type, envisioning stuff. So I would send him a text at the end of the day or whatever and say imagine yourself. And this is something I actually just started doing recently. I very much got into The Secret and all that envisioning, positive thinking stuff that I know Negreanu is big on, and a lot of people are big on. And I would send him imagine yourself with the first double up, imagine everything going smoothly, imagine whatever. And I really think that he had the natural confidence in him. And I think this only just helped a little bit. I think he actually really already had the positive mindset involved. And you heard McKeon talk, and McKeon actually said something that I thought was super sick. He's like, I just always imagined myself doing something like this. Very matter-of-factly, not no ego in it whatsoever. You could tell this kid is just shooting from his heart. This is what he thinks. And why do you think he won the main event? I'm a huge believer of that sort of thing.
Well, he's been crushing for a while. And, I read, some interviews with him from the past, and kind of what you just said comes through in his interviews where he's matter of fact about it, but you can tell he just has that confidence that he's going to go and crush it. And then he does.
Right. Exactly.
Amazing. I did want to ask you, since you were there the whole time, what was your view on the tanking and just the dreadfully slow play? Was it as bad for you guys as it was for us at home watching?
I don't know. I don't know that I really have that huge opinion on it. I mean, if it's within the rules, okay. And it's such a big stage for those guys. I understand. I've actually been called out for tanking myself quite a bit. And I think, I mean, all I would say about it is really, it's usually just, there's too much thinking going on. Too much thinking that probably isn't really helping him. I don't have a real opinion. Like, obviously, if I was playing with him, I would probably be a little bit annoyed. But I just think that there's too much thinking going on. Like, he's probably just thinking too much about things that don't matter. And like, I know I could be projecting this on him, but I know I'm doing it when I'm a little bit self-conscious about my like tells and stuff like that. So I'm trying to like be like thinking in my head very deeply about like, oh, well, what chips did I grab when I was strong? Like stuff that probably doesn't matter, that no one is picking up on, you know, even though like the details obviously matter. I just think it's something that's probably unnecessary, but I don't know. I think, by the way, I think Zvi was this. So many of these guys at the final table, there were such cool guys. And I actually think Zvi played well too. Things didn't turn out well for him, but I think he was another guy too that like not super experienced, not what a lot of people would consider fundamentally good, but had a lot of good instincts and a good mindset. Like good instincts and a good mindset can I just feel like they can take people so far.
And one thing I was interested by is obviously Josh has come in. He's come onto the final table in 7th. He's then ended up in 2nd place. Is that something where at the end of it you guys were sort of celebrating the fact that he'd moved up the pay jumps more than anyone else had, or was it like, oh, we didn't win?
To be honest, once he got heads up, I was just like, this is amazing. I mean, the whole thing was amazing. Making it to day 2 when there was 6 left was amazing. Making it to day 3 when there was 3 left was really amazing. And he got heads up, like, and he made some really key plays down in the stretch that earned him that money. I think Joe was the best that played at the final table by far, by a good amount. And I'm also really impressed with how little of an ego I think he has when he's playing too, which I just think is helping him tons. Like, I don't think he's super, concerned about how he looks or anything, not even just the way he dresses, just in general. I was very impressed with that. But no, with Josh, for sure, I thought it was a massive success. I think he was probably slightly disappointed. And I think he was kind of disappointed with some of the criticism that he received, but whatever.
He's got $4 million in the bank, so
yeah, exactly.
I think your point was key too about it's how he performed, and I thought he performed great. For the level of experience that he had, he was amazing. One of the things that I was wondering about is Joe came in with such a huge chip lead, and did the other guys almost feel like they were playing just for 2nd place? Like it was almost a foregone conclusion that Joe was going to win it?
So there's different answers for everyone. Like I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on what was going on for everyone there. That was the final table. I think some of the guys were overwhelmed by it and probably didn't think that they were actually maybe even deserving to be there. Some of the guys. And I think some of the guys were so blown back by the stage, which I understand. Like I get it, that it was such a big deal for them that they couldn't really play their game. Joe ran well, though, too, for sure. He definitely ran well, and it just was his. I really don't know how else to describe it other than he kind of just took command, and he had a great position on Max. I think the biggest thing of the tournament was he just kind of took Max out of it, or maybe Max took himself out of it. I think Max is a really, really, really good player, but I just think something was up with him at that final table where he couldn't play his game. Like, I think he was thinking too much about like the ICM and the money, which of course, let's all assume that the number one goal is the money. I still don't think that I like the way he played. And it was just something about like what was going on in his mind, I think, because I do think he's an amazing player. But just the fact that Joe was on his left, and like I just don't think he strategically reacted well to Joe's aggression and other people's aggression, really. And I think that really gave Joe everything, because Max was a very good player, a top level player, which is rare for the final table of the main event.
And what would you recommend to someone? So obviously, it's going to be one of our listeners is making it to the final table next year. What advice do you have for them as they're preparing?
I would say the positivity is like huge, and working a lot, like doing some sort of work, like the work that me and you have worked together, the work that we have done in terms of like eliminating the fears is, I think, super key, because it's so much can be fears, like fears of like looking stupid, which I think pretty much everyone had that was at that final table, that they didn't want to look stupid getting it all, because it's you see a play up until the final table, and there's some crazy stuff that goes on. Like Zvi, like 4-bet shoved all in with 10-8 against queens or something like that, which is like, I have no opinion, negative or positive on it. But I just felt like you wouldn't really see that at the final table, because it is such a big stage, and it's not something that you would think that people would want to be shown all in with a bad hand. Like, so I actually think that spot is very exploitable. The fact that people don't want to look stupid, you can almost just like really go after it harder. So just eliminating those types of fears and understanding that a lot of it's not in your strategic part of your brain. It's more like the intuition. So like trying not to like worry about making the right play or whatever, just more worried about like staying, present.
And can you share also with our listeners, just because we want to know some juicy stuff from behind the scenes? Do you have anything for us?
Juicy stuff. I do know this is a bit of a negative thing that I heard from everyone that was at the final table of the November 9, that they had originally, the World Series of Poker had originally guaranteed them Palazzo suites for the whole week. And then just the day that Josh got there, they just said no.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they instead got a place at the Rio, like the regular Rio, for like 2 days. Like that's what they got. They got like a regular suite at the Rio for 2 days. And actually, I was really interested in what was going on with Joe. Joe seemed super mad at something leading up to the final table. Like I'm like friendly with Joe. I don't know him super well, but we're definitely like friendly. We've spoken before. And I don't know if this was like some sort of like strategical thing for him, but when everyone was getting pictures and interviews, he was just like super cold and like, which I think that is a great idea. Like, I think it's a great idea to try to appear as unhuman as possible to other people, because then like you can't like connect with them, so you're more scared of them. That's at least how I operate. So there was something strange going on with him leading up to it, where he seemed very disappointed, not disappointed. He seemed very angry with the World Series of Poker people that were working there. And I was assuming it had something to do with the rooms, but then I was also thinking it might have been some sort of mental thing by him. But then as the tournament progressed, obviously he actually became really talkative and whatever. So I don't know what was going on with that, but that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking us through all of it, Mark. I mean, amazing experience, and one that, hopefully a few of our listeners over the years are going to experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So it's great to have Mark on the show. It's really interesting to hear what's happening behind the scenes and, all of the power of mindset that he was talking about, and just how important it is for the final table.
I've always thought it would be so amazing to be at the November 9, of course, being a participant on the table, but even if not, just being there to coach somebody or just to watch the action, because, it seems so electric. And as you said, the pressure must be immense. And so the mental game issues just have to be overwhelming.
And as I said on the show, I really feel a lot of the criticism that the players get is a little bit harsh, because it's one thing knowing what to do when you're playing your $100 tournament on PokerStars, but I think it's a completely different thing with the pressure of the cameras, as well as, a $7.5 million first prize.
Well, just having the cameras on you and knowing all that attention is on you, and knowing that the Twitter
yeah, they're going to be doing it.
is going nuts, right? And just even Mark was bringing it up about that fear of looking stupid, and how that's just got to be compounded so much just by the environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy thing, but great news, obviously. Josh moving up from 7th to 2nd, so still pretty nice payday, even if he did come in second place.
I would just like to say congrats to him. And I want to reiterate for our listeners, the two main kind of takeaways that I took from what Mark said is take what works for you and do more of it. And just basically putting that focus on, hey, what am I good at? And in Josh's case, it was kind of being the observer. And don't be afraid of how, those decisions you make are going to look to the outside. You just got to go with what works for you and just keep at it.
Yeah, and it certainly worked in his case. So Trisha, where can people find out about you?
You can go over to my website, drtrishacardner.com, or you can follow me on Twitter, even though I was bashing it a minute ago, at Dr. Trisha Cardner.
Excellent. And you can check out my website. It's pokermindcoach.com. And I've got a selection of MP3s and things that you can purchase there to help you focus at the table. So look forward to speaking to you all next week.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Trisha Cardner. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.